why is it so hard to view the Bible as parable and metaphor? There's a lot of truth in the Bible, not necessarily a lot of facts we can prove, but a lot of truth. And if you're going to say you follow Jesus, and that's why you get to impose your will, your policies, again, abortion, cruelty to gay people, none of it comes from Jesus. So I like to say if I'm in a Rolling Stones cover band, and I advertise that I'm a Rolling Stones cover band, but I don't actually play any songs by the Rolling Stones, I should find a new name for my shitty group.
Hello, and welcome to the PoliticsGirl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. So the media outlet Christianity Today recently put out a piece that said the church better start taking Nazification seriously. It was kind of a breakthrough to have an evangelical empire call out the church for not drawing a hard enough line from Nazism. The key argument being that the Bible cannot sit alongside Mein Kampf, that the cross cannot yield to the swastika, and that Christians need to ask themselves if they want Jesus or Hitler because they can't have both. Now, this country is clearly filled with voters of faith. So how did we get so off track? And what is the disconnect between Christianity and American Christianity? So today I'm having a conversation with comedian, writer, and all-around good guy, John Fugelsang, who just wrote an incredible best-selling book about this very topic called The Separation of Church and Hate. The book has been called a rallying cry of compassion and clarity for anyone who is sick of religion being used in bad faith. John calls it a sane person's guide to taking back the Bible from fundamentalists, fascists, and flock-fleecing frauds. But you don't need to hear from me when we can talk directly to the man who wrote it. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, comedian, broadcaster, and best-selling author, John Fugelsang. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you for that introduction, Lee. What a pleasure to be here and drag your whole show down to my level. It's an honor. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I'm actually thrilled you're here. I've wanted you to come on for forever. I've been on your show, Tell Me Everything on Sirius XM, but I've never been able to return the favor, so I'm really, really glad you came.
Thank you so much. I love what you guys do. We were talking about this backstage at the DNC in Chicago. That was, about 70 years ago we had this conversation. And I was saying how much I couldn't wait to come on your show when my book finally came out. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, back when we were young and fresh and had hope. Remember those days?
I have more hope now than I've had in a very, very long time.
Same.
I'm not an optimist, but I am a recovering cynic. And honestly, I got to remind everybody, as hard as it's going to be, and as many people as they're going to hurt, don't forget to take time in the next year to stop and smell the train wreck.
Sure.
Believe me.
Okay, listen. We're moving on to your kick-ass book, all right? You've written this book, which the conceit is basically that for 200 years, the United States Constitution gave Americans the right to a society where the church and state existed independent of each other. But American Christianity has been hijacked by these groups on the far right and politicians who use religion to kind of dictate their very specific and narrow view of how society should be and who it should work for. So you talk about the extremists who are weaponizing a religion that is basically a religion of love for power. And you could argue that these people have actually never been on the side of Christ's teaching. They've just used Christ as sort of like a battering ram to get what they want. So how do we fight back against people that are working in such bad faith? And why did you write the book to kind of address this?
Wow, what a great setup. Thank you, Lee. Well, I come from an abnormally Catholic background. My mom is an ex-nun. My father was a Franciscan brother.
I mean, literally, we need to know that meet cute. How did that happen?
My mother came from the segregated South, and she wanted to get very far away, and she entered the convent right out of high school. They put her through nursing school and eventually sent her off to work with lepers in the jungles of Malawi, Africa. My dad grew up in Brooklyn, and he was a Franciscan brother. He taught history to Catholic boys at St. Francis Prep, and he wore the Jedi robes. And my mother was briefly stationed before Africa at Holy Family Hospital in Brooklyn. So my father, the brother, met my mother, the sister, when he was a patient, fell madly in love, knew he could never, ever admit he was madly in love. Like the Jedi, he had sworn to never know love. So he became her best friend and pen pal all the years that she was in Africa, giving her all the news about the civil rights movement and Vietnam, stuff her Southern father didn't really care about too much, if you know what I mean. And eventually, after about 10 years, it's a very long story, but he got her to leave the convent and go on a date. They were married 2 months later, and they tried to raise us to be progressive, free-thinking Catholics. My dad idolized Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and Dorothy Day. That was the Holy Trinity in our house. I was raised to think that Christianity was about the stuff Jesus talked about, helping the less fortunate, prioritizing the marginalized, servant leadership, humility, washing the feet of your own followers, going to the margins to help the less fortunate. And of course, the more direct stuff Jesus commands, like Matthew 25, when he says individuals and nations are going to be judged heaven or hell by 4 criteria: how they care for the poor, care for the sick, welcome the stranger, and are kind to those in prison. You know, the values of Jesus. And so millions of people, Lee, I think, grew up in a Christianity where they thought that's what the religion was about. This anti-death penalty guy hanging out in the poor neighborhoods of Galilee, warning us about the people who pray in public to be seen, opposing the death penalty even though it was legal, overturning so many of the conservative laws of his own religion, because love's more important than dogma, the whole message of Jesus. And yet, for the past 45 years, it seems like this whole movement's been hijacked, and they did it based on abortion. They got, for 2 generations now, since 1980, they found a way, post-segregation, post-Nixon crashing and burning, they found a way to get the followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus ever talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. That and some homophobia, and you've had at least 2 generations of Christians raised to prioritize stuff Jesus never mentioned while actively voting and legislating against his direct commandments, and these days calling them woke. So I got tired of seeing my parents' religion used as a cloaking device for meanness and cruelty. They say the largest growing religious group in this country are Mormons. Some say it's Islam or none of the above. But I think the largest growing group, Lee, is people who were raised religious and now consider themselves spiritual because they're turned off to all the hypocrisy and cruelty of so much of organized religion. But there's always the true Jesus followers, and through the entire history of Christianity, and we can talk about it, from the time Rome took over and authoritarian Christianity began doing the exact opposite of what Jesus commands, for Jesus, there's always been actual Jesus followers who have resisted authoritarian Christianity every step of the way. And those are the ones we admire.
Yeah, and those are the ones that are most like Jesus. Jesus was a table flipper himself. He was not into the top-down power. I mean, I think that what you're describing is exactly what I feel. I mean, I grew up Christian. I grew up in Canada, so Episcopalian is called Anglican there.
Right.
But I feel increasingly removed from my faith these days. I still believe, like you said, in a higher power, in something, be that God, be it nature, you know, the universe itself. But I have absolutely no relationship to American Christianity. And to be honest, I hate it. It's an anathema to me. I get wiggy when people talk about what Jesus wanted. I'm like, you don't speak for Jesus and you're not behaving like Jesus.
Yeah.
And my husband, who really grew up in the church and actually went through like kind of an, evangelical kind of kick, he talks about swiping the Jesus credit card, like using it as a get out of jail free card for all your bad behavior. He's like, they just keep swiping the Jesus credit card. And he did those like, praise Jesus tent revival things in college, So I feel like our family is actually very religious, and yet we are so removed from what we're seeing as our religion. And I think that's what you're talking about. People that go, this isn't me. That's not what I feel. And I think that then you wrote this book that's kind of a takedown in many ways of this deeply pervasive Christian hatred that we're living through now. There's that expression, there's no hate like Christian love. And I feel like that's such a good way to look at it, because they're going to let the poor starve, right? They're not going to have us have health insurance. Love the stranger. Ew. They're all like, no, I need them to look and think and talk like me. And that means white, straight, male. It's really problematic for me, because I think that all the things that could make us better people, all the sort of beatitudes and the do unto others, that's what's missing now.
Well, that's why I wrote the book, because
Yeah.
I got tired of seeing this, and we have to face the facts. The media is never going to ask them tough follow-up questions. The media is never going to say to Mike Pence, excuse me, Mr. Vice President, where exactly does Jesus drive the gay wedding cakes out of the temple? The media is never going to ask these frauds who don't follow Jesus about the actual teachings of Jesus. And the Democratic Party is going to be way too timid. I mean, there's a few. Buttigieg and Tallarico are great, but by and large, the Democrats have been a piñata. They've been a punching bag on the issue of abortion for 50 years and have never had the guts to point out the Bible's not against abortion. It's not illegal in the Bible. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now because the religion Jesus was raised in doesn't ban them. God asserts a fetus is property in Exodus 21. God asserts that a woman's life has more value in his eye in Exodus 21. God gives rather gruesome abortion tips for unfaithful pregnant wives in Numbers chapter 5. And if you think God cares about innocent children's lives, let me tell you Gentiles about Passover. Jesus is against the death penalty. Abortion existed in Jesus' time, but God never saw fit to have Moses or Elijah or Christ or Paul or any of the prophets ever mention it. Now, I'm a clown, and I just made the case better than any Democrat in the Senate in the last 40 years. Get off these women's back. It's more dangerous to give birth or to be pregnant than it is to have an abortion. That's just the science. So men have no goddamn business telling women what they can do with their body. At no point in the Bible does Jesus say men should be allowed to force citizens to be pregnant against their will. I'm not saying Jesus is pro-abortion. I'm not saying Christ is a clinic escort on the weekends. I'm saying they've prioritized something that's not in the Bible. Jesus is against the death penalty. They don't follow Jesus. And this is what we have to start calling them out for. They don't fight for any of the things Christ talked about. They don't fight for religious freedom. They don't fight against Satan or for God. Their only goal is conservative Christian power over society, over government, over culture. Everything if they cared about stopping abortions, they'd have more sex ed in schools and make birth control free. They want power. They use the issue for it. If they wanted to stop border crossings, they'd pass a law and lock up every white person who hires an undocumented immigrant, and boom, supply and demand. The giant help wanted sign at our border would finally come down. They don't want to take the help wanted sign down. They need the issue to get power. And I'm so sick of seeing how, again, when it comes to immigration, that's how they're doing it now. That's the most fake Christian moment of this time we're in. And I'm not saying that we should have completely open borders. We should, of course, have some standards of who comes into the country. It was Reagan who called for amnesty and open borders, not the Democrats. But the fact is, the God of the Hebrew Scriptures commands us to welcome the stranger and commands us to treat the alien as we treat our own. And Jesus shows up in Matthew 25 and says individuals and nations are going to be judged by how they welcome the stranger. So you got to know that to be able to say to your uncle at the Thanksgiving table, why should I listen to you and Donald Trump and reject the words of God and Jesus? See, I wrote this book because we don't have to fight these people. We can let them fight God. We can let them fight Jesus. We can say, where exactly in the Bible does Jesus say anything against gay people? And let them argue with the Christ who has the Sermon on the Mount that completely forbids any kind of homophobia or discrimination. The fact is, their real religion is pretending they're better than you, right? And if you're a follower of Jesus, it's all about humility. That's it. If you think you're better than somebody else because you follow Jesus, you don't actually follow Jesus. He's not about total right-wing domination of the school board. So this book takes everything that divides us, women's equality, feminism, abortion rights, LGBTQ rights, healthcare policy, poverty policy, sex hang-ups, gun policy, anti-Semitism, hating atheists, hating Muslims, whatever's dividing us. And I try to show how, even if you're an atheist, if you're debating a Christian nationalist or fundamentalist on most of the issues that divide us, Jesus is probably on your side, whether he's real or you believe in him or not. It's time to take the Bible away from these frauds because they only use it to get more power. We have to stop letting them get away with that. And if they're going to claim that their holy book tells them to take these positions, we're allowed to cite that holy book and see if they really mean it.
I have talked to you a million times about my darling sweet golden doodle Chips. We are a dog family. We are obsessed with our dog. He is the cutest, best boy that has ever been, but he is also an incredibly picky eater. Sometimes when it comes to dog food, you feel like you have to make a choice. You can either have fresh and healthy dog food, or you can have easy to store and serve dog food, but you cannot have both. With Sundays, you don't have to choose. Sundays for Dogs is a fresh, air-dried dog food made from clean ingredients. Recipes are customized based on the needs of your dog, their size, breed, allergies, activity level, and unlike other fresh dog foods, Sundays does not require thawing, refrigeration, or preparation because of their air-drying process. We travel with Sundays. I keep a bag of Sundays in my office for when Chips gets snacky in the middle of the day. It's just convenient and quality food. Sundays was started by Dr. Tori Waxman, a veterinarian who has devoted her life to animals, which is probably why it has the highest standards of quality in food safety. It's 100% all-natural meat and superfoods with 0% synthetic nutrients or artificial ingredients. And to make it that much better, Sundays ships straight to your door, so you never have to worry about running out of dog food again. You can cancel or pause your subscription anytime with Sundays' 14-day money-back guarantee. There's a reason thousands of dog parents have made the switch and reported their dogs have more energy, better poops, softer fur, and fresher breath. I can tell you that my picky dog eats it. He enjoys it, and I don't have to stress or waste an entire can of food because he's in a mood. I am very grateful to Sundays. So if you want to try Sundays or make the switch, go right now to sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl and get 50% off your first order. Or you can use the code PoliticsGirl at checkout. That's 50% off your first order at sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl. sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl, or use the code PoliticsGirl at checkout. Well, it's getting colder, which means it's the perfect time to head to Quince and refresh your wardrobe with pieces that let you look polished, stay warm, and save big without compromising on quality. Quince has all the fall and winter essentials. Think 100% Mongolian cashmere from $50, washable silk tops and skirts, perfectly tailored denim, all at prices that feel too good to be true. I just bought the burgundy silk maxi skirt and matching cashmere sweater for the holidays, along with a white fisherman cable knit for, just for me. It's a little gift. So I'm kind of excited. Quince is able to keep the prices low by partnering directly with ethical top-tier factories and cutting out the middleman. That way you get luxury quality pieces delivered directly to your house at half the price of similar brands. I have worn their navy blue cashmere boat sweater for like 2 years and it still looks great. I spent the entire summer in their oversized blue linen button-down. I really do love their products. So find your fall and winter staples at Quince. Go to quince.com/politicsgirl for free shipping on your order, and that's 365 days of returns. That's QUINCE.com/politicsgirl to get free shipping and 365 days of returns. That's free shipping and 365 days of returns at quince.com/politicsgirl. It is gift-giving season after all. You might want to check it out.
If they're going to claim that their holy book tells them to take these positions, we're allowed to cite that holy book and see if they really mean it.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Just evidence-based knowledge and common sense would be wonderful if we could live in a world like that. I mean, I think the thing that you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like your book is perspective shifting in many ways because you grew up steeped in religion.
My parents got me organ lessons, Lee. That's how bad it was. Not piano lessons, organ lessons.
No, with the pipes and you're pulling and you're doing
that was the dream one day, yes. But I knew my pedals and organ lessons.
Organ lessons.
I was baptized in my parents' living room by a priest my mother knew in the jungles of Africa. I had a really insanely Catholic upbringing, but I thought it was about love, right?
It was about love. There's absolutely no part of my upbringing in which I was told to hate other people. There was no part of my Christian upbringing in which I was told I was better than other people.
Yeah.
It was all about how are you treating people? How are you making people's lives better? And then a little bit of me patting a lot of fur coats in waspy Christmas services that sat in front of me. I was like, ooh, all these fur coats I can pat. But no, I loved it. I loved going to church as a child. I loved feeling like there was someone who loved me, that I was part of something bigger, and that I was supposed to treat other people as well as I could. That was a huge part of it for me. And that's not what I'm getting now. And I think what people will get if they read your book is that it's not at all preachy, right? You're a comedian. It's a very funny book.
There's way more dick jokes in this book than in most theology treatises you will read this year. I must warn you in advance.
That's what we need. We need a couple more dick jokes, a little bit more to get us out of this mood we're all in. I mean, I think the thing is that you don't have to be a biblical scholar to understand what you're talking about when you read this book. It's incredibly informative, but you break down, like you were just saying, these common fundamentalist arguments on things like abortion and immigration and gay rights. And you really expose the hypocrisy and honestly the inaccuracy of Christian logic by using, as we're hearing you do now, scripture, right? Common sense and what you call deeply inappropriate humor, which I think is actually really important.
And I want to say, like, the book doesn't denigrate religion, but I also don't ask you to believe anything supernatural. It just goes based on the book we have. Let's assume it's all true. And this is why the far right is still against the teachings of Jesus. Now, I'm not talking about the nice conservative Christians. And in many ways, I find nice conservative Christians are often much more liberal with kindness than many actual liberals. So this is about the haters. And nice conservative Christians are going to have to deal with these people too. They're trying to redefine every level of our society based on deeply bullshit take on the Bible, and they despise what's in the Gospels as much as they despise what's in the Bill of Rights. They're trying to do to Jesus what they're trying to do to the founding fathers, and it's against the stated intentions of both. So it's up to us. Again, we have to convince people, and look how many young people have convinced parents and grandparents in the last 30 years to drop all the homophobia. I mean, there's so much evidence we are getting better. You told me back in the 90s that we'd have gay marriage and stop putting people in jail for weed and have a black president. I wouldn't have believed it. So there is, we're getting worse economically, but we are becoming kinder in so many ways. Kids today can't believe the homophobia that you and I grew up with. And in 20 years, kids won't believe how transphobic they were back in the 20s. Kids get used to it. And what worked in stigmatizing and stereotyping one generation for a previous generation of charlatan to get votes, not going to work for the next one. I do believe that in many ways we are wired to get kinder, but the problem's not religion, it's the fundamentalists. Our atheist friends like to say, oh, religion's responsible for all the oppression of women and homophobia and violence, and it's hard to disagree, but it's not the liberal and moderate and even conservative Christians, Muslims, and Jews causing all the violence and oppression. It is always the extreme conservative wing of every religion, causing all the problems, ruining all the religions. Look at the Middle East. It ain't the liberal Christians, Muslims, and Jews causing these problems. And you look, no matter how far to the right you go, they're all the same. Women are second-class citizens. The more to the right your religion is, the more God made the majority of humans on earth not good enough, the more you have the sex hang-ups against women or gay people having sex, the more you think violence is okay if my side does it. The more to the right you are, the more your side believes in punishment over healing. And the more to the right your religion is, the more you think that other religions are allowed to exist, but mine is always superior to theirs. I mean, that's it, right? Like, that's what they mean by religious freedom. Oh, Muslims and Jews can exist, but we have to be on top. It's so the opposite of everything Jesus and the founders wanted. And yet it seems like these people keep getting more and more power. And I think the best way to convince the undecided middle they're frauds is to show they don't even follow Jesus. We have to stop them. We can't hate them. But in a democracy, we have to beat them.
Yeah, no, we do have to beat them. And I think the thing is that years ago, I heard about the mountain theory, which I'm sure you know, this idea that essentially we're all in the same religion. We just learned it in different parts of the world. So if you see the world as like a huge mountain, and if you learn Buddhism on that side of the world, or if you're a Muslim and you learn about Allah, or if you're American Christian or a Canadian Christian, if you go up the mountain, we all end up at the same place, which is a place of love and kindness and acceptance. Like most religions are based around that, right? That we all just learned it at a different part of the mountain. But if the higher you go up to where your God would be, we're actually all at the same place, which is treat people like you want to be treated, be kind to others, take care of those who are lesser than you. Most religions have love as their fundamental priority.
Exactly.
And yet you're saying everyone thinks that they should be on the top.
Fundamentalists of every religion are the ones fighting for power.
Yeah, it's the extremists, and they're using it for their own power. And it's
Always.
usually a bunch of men who have, translated the Bible to say what they want it to say. This kind of thing. I find it fascinating because it really always comes down to power and hypocrisy. I was saying in the introduction that Christianity Today recently published a piece about the church needing to take the Nazification of America seriously, which to me seemed like a big deal for an evangelical network to say. The article talked about how the cross can't yield to the swastika and the Bible has no place sitting beside Mein Kampf. And they were very clearly telling their followers that they have to choose between Jesus and Hitler. And they were discussing people like Tucker Carlson platforming Nazi apologist Nick Fuentes and how the Heritage Heritage Foundation is trying to soften the blowback from that conversation,
Yeah,
because there are clearly conservatives in America now deeply uncomfortable with expanding their tent to include Nazism in their coalition.
yes,
But this is the same party that had all those text messages leaked from leaders of the Young Republicans
correct,
who were incredibly racist, anti-Semitic, and also like pro-Hitler and
correct.
pro-gas chambers, right? So apparently there are quite a few American Christians that actually are Team Fuentes. And Trump did have him to Mar-a-Lago for a private dinner.
Indeed, with Kanye, the all-you-can Nazi Thanksgiving.
But the article was saying, like, the line in the sand here isn't just crucial for the future of this nation, but also for the reputation of the church itself, right? Like, we are
Yes,
actually degrading what we're supposed to be upholding. What do you think about that?
I think it's exactly the truth. I mean, this is what the authoritarian regimes do. They dress themselves up in religious language. Hitler did it, and Hitler used the same language you're hearing right now, from saying, "My faith tells me to see my Lord as a fighter," to taking a powerless minority and calling them an existential threat, an infestation, an invasion. And this is what demagogues do. They'll take a powerless minority, they'll say this little group is a threat to our way of life, whether it's Jews or Muslims or transgender kids or undocumented migrants looking for nanny work. This group is a threat to our way of life, and only I can keep you safe from the existential threat. And this is how they always do it. And it's the opposite of what Jesus commands. Jesus commands you to go to the most despised peoples and love them. If your church isn't telling you to love your enemies, but is telling you who your enemies are, you're not really in a church. And so this is the history of the faith, right? Since Rome took over. And when Rome co-opted Jesus' movement, it stopped being about helping the poor, this little movement of a brown-skinned Jewish faith healer in the poor neighborhoods. Now it was about dogma and power and hierarchy and armies and conquest. And with the Crusades, we finally began to use Jesus' name to do the opposite of what Jesus commands. Slaughter Muslims, slaughter Jews, slaughter pagans for land. That was the beginning of doing the opposite of Jesus for Jesus. And that's been the greatest sin of the religion, right? That's the power-hungry Christians. But you had the Christ followers, like St. Francis of Assisi, who quit the war, renounced violence, walked unarmed through a war zone to host peace talks between a Muslim sultan and a Crusader army. You've got the Pope and the Vatican having the doctrine of discovery and saying, go ahead and rape the foreign lands and extract their resources and subjugate the people, but push Christianity on them to save their souls so it'll all be okay. So you've got Columbus slaughtering and mutilating and raping the Taino people, but it was the Catholic priest on his third ship, Bartolomeo de las Casas, who committed the first act of protest by a white person in this hemisphere when he wrote to the Queen to protest how the indigenous were being treated as slaves, because yes, back then people knew it was wrong. Slavery props up Christianity, but you have the Christ followers like the Quakers and Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. Slavery's propping up the Industrial Revolution and exploitation of workers and children working in mines. And it's Dorothy Day and the Catholic worker movement that use scripture to shame capitalism. And the Bible totally backs up segregation. They use Christianity to prop it up, and it was Dr. King out of the Ebenezer Church with nonviolence and the scriptures to shame white America out of our own apartheid. There's an incredible history of Christian activism, but it's almost always manifested itself in resistance to Christian authoritarianism. And that's exactly what you're seeing right now when you witness these priests getting shot in the face with pepper balls, because they object to the way we're treating the migrants who come here to work jobs white people dangle for them. What is the Jesus teaching that justifies any of this? Ask your MAGA loved one or coworker. What is the actual teaching of Christ that motivated your vote for this guy? What is one teaching of Jesus in the four Gospels that Donald Trump or MAGA or the Republican Party have fought for this entire fucking century? Just give me one chapter and verse, please. You'll find out they don't really know the Bible that well. And they're counting on you not knowing the Bible that well. Just because they hate trans kids and put up a freaking tree in their house once a year doesn't make them holy people. And as Luke Skywalker says in The Last Jedi, the Jedi don't own the Force. These people don't own Christianity. You don't have to believe in the Bible to take it back from these frauds. Most atheists, know it better than the fundamentalists do anyway.
Yeah, so true.
Man, I got on
You know?
Politics Girl. I got all preachy. Look at me. You get me
I'll
all
take
riled
the
up.
preachy. Look, I think the church is catching on in many ways themselves. Like the Pope
Oh, yeah.
recently, the Pope himself, our American Pope,
This guy.
recently called on Donald Trump to reflect on his administration's ICE raids and the treatment of immigrants and the way they're behaving and how it's not at all in line with the scripture. The U.S. Catholic bishops just issued a super rare public condemnation of the president's what they're calling indiscriminate mass deportation of immigrants.
These guys are so evil, Lee. They've got the liberals on the side of the Catholic bishops. They've got us defending Harvard University. They're so evil. That's how bad it is. The Catholic bishops are the good guys again, folks. We're in the upside down. But God bless them. God bless Chicago,
this is how bad
Leo.
it is.
Yeah.
This is how bad it is because they are talking about how this administration, the U.S. Catholic bishops all got together and they're talking about how this administration is acting completely out of line with what they believe. And the amount of Catholics in the world, it actually matters that these guys are saying that. They say they are disturbed by the climate of fear and anxiety around this immigration enforcement. They are calling actively for reform. And I find this fascinating. I also find it fascinating watching Donald Trump on Air Force One being like, am I getting into heaven? Like, I don't think I'm getting into heaven. I'm like, bro, you sure as hell ain't. But also the fact that he's thinking about it, I find that fascinating too. I feel like religion is having, honestly, like a returning to what it's supposed to be. If Donald understands he's not getting in, he understands what it's actually supposed to be about. I've recently learned that how you sleep is just as important as how long you sleep, which is why it really matters what kind of mattress you're using. When you finally hit the mattress at the end of the day, you need it to be comfortable, which is why I'm talking to you about Leesa. Leesa has a lineup of beautifully crafted mattresses tailored to how you sleep. Each mattress is designed with specific sleep positions and feel preferences in mind. The mattresses are designed and assembled in the US for exceptional quality that you will feel the difference from day one. Premium materials that deliver serious comfort and full body support no matter how you sleep. Leesa has been tested and awarded Best Hybrid Mattress by New York Times Wirecutter and is exclusively featured by West Elm as their go-to mattress partner. And Leesa isn't just about sleep, it's about impact, because every year they donate thousands of mattresses to people in need, while also partnering with organizations like Clean Hub to help remove harmful plastic waste from our oceans. So go to leesa.com for 25% off mattresses, plus an extra $50 off with the promo code PoliticsGirl, exclusive for my listeners. That's LEESA.com, promo code PoliticsGirl, for 25% off mattresses, plus an extra $50 off. Support our show and let them know we sent you after you go to checkout. That's leesa.com, promo code PoliticsGirl. This episode is brought to you by iQbar, our exclusive snack and hydration sponsor. iQbar is the better-for-you, plant protein-based snack made with brain-boosting nutrients to refuel, nourish, and satisfy hunger without a sugar crash. iQbars are entirely gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, GMO-free, and have no artificial sweeteners. They are, however, packed with clean, delicious ingredients to keep you physically and mentally fit, like magnesium, lion's mane, adaptogens, and more. With less sugar and carbs than the alternative, the plant protein bars are a smart snack choice, and their zero sugar drink mixes will hydrate you with electrolytes while improving your mood and boosting your clarity. I love these drink mixes, and I have to tell you, the blueberry bar is my absolute favorite. With over 25,000 five-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with iQbar. Their brain and body boosting bars, the hydration mixes, and the mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all three: 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. It's a great thing to check out. And right now, iQbar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all iQbar products, including their sampler pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text PG to 64,000. That's text PG to 64,000. That's PG to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Okay, so I have been using our next sponsor a lot lately. For months, I wavered between fleeing the country because I'm mad and scared and I get death threats now, and choosing to stay. And I have chosen to stay. And since I'm hunkering down, I have also decided to completely redo my house, which is expensive. So I am spending a ton of time on dupe.com. If you have looked up furniture lately, it is extraordinarily overpriced. Dupe is this awesome tool that helps you find high-quality, budget-friendly versions of the expensive pieces you're coveting. It's so easy to use. You just type a / in front of any product URL, and it shows you the lookalike that won't drain your savings. And these aren't just pathetic knockoffs. Most of the time, these are things that are made at exactly the same factory that are just sold under different names at a way less scary price. It's totally free to use, dangerously addictive, and blowing up on TikTok for good reason. So if you have expensive taste and perhaps a less expensive budget, dupe.com is your new best friend. Go ahead and make your dream home happen without maxing out your credit card. Give it a try for yourself. Dupe.com is really easy to use. Just type dupe.com/ before any product URL in your browser, and it instantly finds you less expensive alternatives. I often just cut and paste into dupe.com. They even have an app and a browser extension that you can download without any account or sign up required, and it's completely free to use. So stop wasting your money on brand names and start saving with dupe.com today. If Donald understands he's not getting in, he understands what it's actually supposed to be about.
He's going to see all of his friends and his dad in the other place, so he'll be fine. Jeff Epstein, Roy Cohn, they're all waiting for a big reunion party, you know? It's interesting hearing him talk about these things because every time Donald Trump talks about Christianity, an angel coughs up blood. The fact is, this movement does not give a rat's ass about Jesus. They only care about their own power. Now, they'll get around all this. They'll get around God and Jesus. How can you get around God and Jesus on welcoming the stranger? They'll go to St. Paul, who I had to write a whole chapter on Jesus' uptight PR guy, because St. Paul's version of the Jesus movement is what passes for Christianity now, so we have to filter everything from Jesus through Paul. And it's Paul who says in the book of Romans that you have to respect the governing authorities, for God put them in charge. He's saying this to the church that was being built in Rome. Paul was a Pharisee and a Roman citizen. The fact that he was a Roman citizen meant he could travel all around the Roman Empire and set up churches, while the apostles who actually knew Jesus were all getting murdered by Paul's old friends back home. That's a whole other story. But it's Paul who said, respect the governing authorities. So they will throw out all of God and all of Jesus to cling to one line of Paul. They're illegals. They cross the border. And it's not legal. First off, crossing the border is a misdemeanor. Tell me what other misdemeanors involve you losing your child. Secondly, you want to make them furious? Don't play their game by using this racist slur, illegals. Call them Christian refugees. They are brown-skinned Christians, almost every single one of them that's crossing the southern border. But at the end of the day, they're going to rely on Paul saying, respect the governing authorities. I don't recall these people respecting the governing authorities when Joe Biden, with a D after his name, was in the White House. And these are the people who cheer on a president who supports cops being beaten for a lie. These are the folks who pardon the Camp Auschwitz guys. They do not respect the governing authorities. They're authoritarians. That's it. They only respect power. They only care about power. That's what they think godliness is. So there's more of us than there are of them. And all you need to do is know a few Bible verses and ask them the right questions. I don't believe in hating these people, but I think you'll find that if you can engage them on what's actually in the scriptures, and I tried to lay it out argument by argument for any topic.
Yeah.
I find that if something happens, they'll never agree with you. Don't buy this book for your right-wing loved one. It's for you to deal with them. It's not for them. They'll hate it and throw it at you. But they may appreciate that you at least, if it is a loved one or a coworker, that you took the time to reach over and try to engage them on scripture, because I think you get a lot farther showing them in the book where Jesus wasn't an immigrant-hating homophobe than if you just call your uncle an immigrant-hating homophobe. They have a persecution complex. They think you look down on them. They want you to call them a superstitious ghoul. Don't give them the satisfaction. Turn the other cheek if they're mean to you. Let them. Model how to be nice to people. In the long run, you're not trying to win them over. You're trying to win over everybody else at the Thanksgiving dinner table, everybody else at the reunion. You won't get the fundamentalist, but you might reach their wife or their kids, and they'll know that there's a lot more to spirituality than the mean, male-dominated nonsense these people push.
Yeah, having another perspective out there, leading with curiosity. It's what I often talk about in general with politics. You know, when I don't agree with someone on politics and I say you're at your dining room table and your dad says something outrageous, instead of yelling at him, be like, where'd you hear that?
I know.
Where'd you read that? Why do you think that?
You're so good on Abby's show, by the way. I like that show. That show's designed to make it Thunderdome. Like, I think they huff you up on meth before you go in just to make you angry. And you're such a bodhisattva, man. You're a Jedi master on that show, talking with our right-wing friends.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. I always feel like I'm trying to give the truth a fighting chance on that show.
Yeah.
And in general, being a woman on that show is quite interesting, because when you watch the show, women are constantly talked over, and then a man will say exactly the same thing. If there's another, say, liberal man at the table, he could say what I just said, and everyone will listen to him for a second. And I think,
do you know what
hold
else
on.
too? When I was on the show, like if a guy says the same exact thing a woman just said, they'll all act like, "Oh, that guy just said that," and they won't even notice
How
that the woman
brilliant,
previously said it.
David!
Yeah.
What a wonderful comment.
It's incredible.
Well, let
it
me
happens.
ask you, since I
Yeah.
have you, honestly, about women, because Christianity is like, you're here, we're talking about religion and how it's being twisted to control people to the benefit of others. I'd love your thoughts on how the Christian nationalists are speaking about women these days. There are so many online pastors, right-wing, quote unquote, men of God, talking about how women shouldn't speak, how we shouldn't vote, how we shouldn't be in the public sphere, right? To me, it is the weakest of beta men telling women that they shouldn't compete and they should sit down and shut up. And yet it feels like in certain Christian circles, it's becoming acceptable to suggest that women should return to subservience. We look at red states and we have legislators doing things like lowering the age of consent or keeping or adding child marriage back to the books. It all feels very dangerous to me, especially living in this post-Roe world.
I do want to say that what we're living through now with this era of Trumpism, I've always believed, in the horror movie, Lee, when the kids all get together and kill the monster in the last scene and they all relax and finally everything's all right. And then suddenly the monster rises one last time and it wasn't dead after all. And this time it's the little shy kid who has the weapon that kills the monster, and the little jump scare at the end. That's what Trumpism has been. It has been the last bellow of the ugliest, most misogynist, racist part of the 20th century. The shittiest, most insecure white male needs to dominate everything kind of bullshit is dying off, and it's not going to go gently. Caucasians are going to be a minority in this country 20 years from now. That's when it's projected to dip below 50%. These people are heavily armed. They're going to be freaking out a lot for the next 20 years, and they're going to be claiming that it's all for Jesus. So the chapter that meant the most to me, the chapter I learned the most about in writing this book, was the chapter on feminism. I come from a long line of strong Southern women, and the fact is that in the world of the Bible that Jesus was born into, women were property. Women had no inheritance rights. A man could dump his woman anytime he wanted if he no longer delighted in her. Marriage was a contract between two men, the father of the bride and the father of the groom. Women were property, and they were icky. Men did not understand women's physiology, and their menstrual flow, which gives life to all beings, was weaponized against them for centuries of shame, which was used to systemically control women. If you rape a woman who's a virgin, you got to pay her father some money and marry her. I mean, it's the gospel according to Ike Turner. It's really bad. Jesus shows up, this radical reformed Jew, and breaks all the rules and treats women as equals and makes women leaders in his movement. Women actually sponsored Jesus. They were his benefactors. You might not have been taught in your church that women with money were the executive producers. You wonder who financed this? How did Jesus and these guys afford to go walking around? Women with money financed it. This is a celibate man, and yet women were so drawn to him because he consistently treated women as equals. Story after story, we're taught as kids. We're not taught why they're revolutionary. I mean, there's three women, Mary and Martha and Mary Magdalene, who go everywhere with Jesus. It seems like there's 15 apostles, right? But the men who wrote the Bible said, no, it's 12 apostles and 3 groupies. But the women are the only ones who didn't abandon Jesus. And when he comes back, the women are the first ones who revealed themselves. No, they sold T-shirts and all. They sold merch at the big gigs. That was all the women. They were volunteers, not apostles. So, you look at, really quick, The Samaritan Woman by the Well. It's a great Sam Cooke song. Jesus was not legally allowed to talk to this woman, and the Samaritans were the foreign minority you're allowed to hate. This woman had been married 5 times, and Jesus knows it. But he doesn't slut-shame her. He doesn't care about her past. She's fetching water by herself in the middle of the day because she can't do it with the other women in the morning. She's been slut-shamed by her whole town. Jesus tells her that's all cool. Jesus tells her he's the Messiah. It's the longest recorded conversation he has privately in the Bible, and it's with a woman he wasn't legally allowed to speak to because he was a Jew and she was a Samaritan. He doesn't care. He's all about breaking down your religion's laws about exclusivity. Then there's this great story of Mary and Martha, where Martha's trying to make things ready for the apostles. They're over the house, and Mary's sitting there at Jesus' feet learning, and Martha's all frustrated because Mary's not helping. She's cooking for all these guys, and Jesus is like, Martha, you're stressing everybody out. She's made the right choice. As a kid, I felt bad for Martha. I was the oldest son. She's doing all the work. I didn't know that it was illegal to teach women, and that Jesus was breaking the law by teaching Martha's sister Mary, and that by sitting at his feet, that was the sign of being the prized pupil. I didn't understand that what Jesus was saying to Martha was that it's more important for women to get an education than do housework. They don't teach us why he was a revolutionary. And then there's the bleeding woman, another great Sam Cooke song, Bleeding 12 Years. She knew if she could touch the hem of her garment, she'd be healed. It's in all the cartoons, it's in Jesus movies. The reality is, as I said, women's anatomies were weaponized against them. And when a woman was menstruating, she was considered unclean in the eyes of God. If you sat where a menstruating woman had sat, you'd be unclean. If you touched anything a woman had touched, you'd be unclean. This woman's bleeding 12 years. By the law of her own faith, she was unclean in the eyes of God. And by going into the crowd, she broke every law. She made everybody in the crowd unclean. When she touched Jesus' garment, she made Jesus ritually unclean in the eyes of God. Jesus turns around, he says, who touched me? She goes, me. And he says, daughter, your faith has healed you. It's the only time in the Bible Jesus ever calls anybody daughter. And he does it for a ritually impure woman who just broke the laws of the religion about what she can't do. She violated the taboo. Jesus breaks it for good. Time and again, Jesus breaks conservative laws about divorce, the death penalty, because he doesn't care. He's about, fuck these rules. It's a deeper kind of love. Go beyond what your love teaches you. And then as soon as Jesus dies, Paul takes over, and Paul brings all his hang-ups about women and all that bullshit about submitting to men, your natural place of submission. None of that comes from Jesus. It all comes from Paul. So any Christian who's trying to pull that shit on you is not a Christian. They're a Paulist. Call them out for it. They're not following Jesus, who treated women as equals. They're following the hang-ups of Paul. And you'll notice conservative guys always quote Paul. They're never trying to put the quotes of Jesus on a classroom or a courthouse wall.
Right. I love that. I mean, here's the thing. You're clearly incredibly smart. And you have this expansive knowledge of religion and politics that feels so relevant to this moment we're living through. And it's not like you're just doing some massive takedown of Christianity or Christian values.
There's plenty of great books like that out there, though. There's plenty of good books out there.
Sure, but it's about the hypocrisy. The overall message of your book seems to be more about what the Bible and Jesus were actually trying to teach us. Lessons that, whether you're Christian or not, like love, mercy, service to others, treating people like you'd like to be treated, and how these things are still worthy of being held up in our society. But I don't think the book is just for Christians or even Americans. It's a bit of a call to arms for anyone who is sick of their religion being used as an excuse for hate.
You're right. And that's what it's always been. It's always been the progressive and moderate and conservative sane Christians and their allies of other religions, Jews and atheists and agnostics, to beat back the batshit Christians. That's what it's always been. Even if you don't believe it, you know, I like to say we know Jesus spoke in parable and metaphor. Why is it so hard to view the Bible as parable and metaphor? There's a lot of truth in the Bible, not necessarily a lot of facts we can prove, but a lot of truth. And if you're going to say you follow Jesus, and that's why you get to impose your will, your policies, again, abortion, cruelty to gay people, none of it comes from Jesus. So I like to say, if I'm in a Rolling Stones cover band, and I advertise that I'm a Rolling Stones cover band, but I don't actually play any songs by the Rolling Stones, I should find a new name for my shitty group. You know what I'm saying, Lee? You know what I mean?
I do. You don't want the audience to get no satisfaction. You need to play.
Oh, look at this one. Look at this one.
You need to be doing, you need to be playing the hits, my friend.
Some of the best Christians are the atheists, right? Some of the best Christians are the atheists, and the most godless heathens are the loud Christians.
Yeah. I mean, look, you wrote Separation of Church and Hate from a place of like deep religious knowledge, deep political knowledge. You actually, to me, are a person of faith. And it's just debunking this perpetual misconception that right-wing conservative politics align with Jesus's teaching, because they clearly don't. And I so appreciate your book, not only because it's a great read, but because it allows us to have these conversations with people, you know, to open up, not to fight with them, but to, again, lead with curiosity, lead with Jesus, lead
Amen.
with what he was supposed to stand for, to sort of reconnect with what it was supposed to be in a country that is so divided.
I can't say it better than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm such a fan of what you do, Lee. I just want to say I've been a longtime fan, and we met at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, where I just gushed to you and your husband because I just love what you do. I love the tone. I love that you always keep it entertaining first and preachy last. And it's really an honor to be on your show and to congratulate you guys for all your success, because you do such a good broadcast.
John, thank you so much. And I hope people will listen to you on SiriusXM. Please tell them how they can buy your book and follow your work moving
Oh,
forward.
Lord. Okay, here it comes. Okay, it's a
Do it.
Separation of Church and Hate, a sane person's guide to taking back the Bible from fundamentalist fascists and flock-fleecing frauds. 7 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. Get the audiobook. I also have a Substack, because that's the thing now. I'm all over social media at John Fugelsang. I apologize for the goofy spelling of my last name. The show is called Tell Me Everything, 5 nights a week, primetime on SiriusXM Progress Shuttle 127, 9 to midnight Eastern, 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific Time, and the John Fugelsang podcast. If you don't have SiriusXM, all the best parts of last night's show, go to johnfugelsang.com and meethook.live/JF for our recent live special we just did for the Separation of Church and Hate book tour live in D.C. with special guest Glenn Kirshner. And I think I've hoarded myself about as deeply as I possibly can, Lee. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you, and I hope you'll come back again.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
So that was John Fugelsang, reminding us that the problem isn't religion. It's the fundamentalists and the extremists who use religion as a way to power. As John says, if your church isn't telling you to love your enemies, but telling you who your enemies are, then it isn't a church. We have to stop using religion as an excuse to hate. There is a reason our Constitution gave us a society where the church and state existed independent of each other. And anyone who is suggesting the two should co-mingle isn't doing it because they love Jesus. They're doing it because they love power, and they're acquiring it in his name. I want to thank John for joining us today, and you for caring enough about this country to be here. Now maybe consider picking up a copy of Separation of Church and Hate as a Christmas present. What a timely gift. Until next week, PG out. Would you like to get this podcast ad-free, delivered directly to your inbox along with my kitchen rants? Then please consider becoming a member of PoliticsGirl Premium by going to politicsgirl.com and signing up. If you're already a premium member of this podcast, thank you so much for your support. And if you're not a member, please consider becoming a patron of my work. Mainstream news is only giving you a version of billionaire-backed propaganda at this point. So if you want real knowledge, it's essential to support those of us out here still bringing it to you. There is a link to sign up in the bio of this episode, but also at politicsgirl.com. And as always, please like and share this podcast so we can grow our audience, because the more people who have access to this kind of information, the better. As always, thank you for your time and support. The Politics Girl podcast is written and performed by me, Lee McGowan, and produced and edited by Happy Warrior Entertainment. All rights reserved.